It's time for Developer Preview 2. Android 13 is starting to take shape, and I want to take this opportunity to look into some of the new features. Now, in the last video, I was hinting at something that I found which has now materialized itself in the second developer preview that just released a couple days ago. And in fact, some of you, thank you for this by the way, have pointed out in the comments that this is now in fact happening. Of course, first we have to look at the new notification permission. Timestamps are in the description as always. Let's get started. Okay, so here it is, the new notification runtime permission that comes with Android 13. And it's declared like any other permission, and you have to ask and get consent from the user before you can post visible notifications to the notification tray. So I've updated my sample app to include this new runtime permission at the top here with the value post notifications. And in my main activity, I've updated the UI a little bit so that when you click on the button that says show notification, it will ask first if you have notification permission or not. If you don't, then it will ask with a activity result contract. We can see this here. This is basically the listener for the poster notification button. So when notifications are enabled, then it will show the notification right away to the notification tray and everything that we knew about. If it doesn't have notifications enabled, then it will try to launch the permissions contract, which is basically the request permission flow for the new post notifications permission. The callback for this one is down here. We can see if it's granted, then I log something and I again go back to showing the visible notification. If it was denied though, then I use this kind of code to figure out if this is the first time the user has denied it or if it's a subsequent time. Just like with other runtime permissions, if you deny it twice from the user's perspective, you will never see it again. It basically implies that they said, never ask me again about this, I don't care. At this point, the only way you can get notifications is A, to uninstall and reinstall the app, or B, go to system settings and toggle it on there. My fallback down here is to actually redirect the user to system settings and then they can toggle it there. It's kind of annoying and this is the controversial part, but yeah, alas, that's how it is. So this is a fresh installation here. I click the post notifications button and I see this new system window here. If I actually actively click the don't allow button, then I can do that twice, and after the second time, it's always implied to never ask again. So I'm going to click don't allow now. So at this point, whenever I click again, it's implied that it'll never happen, right? It skips the system dialog completely, and it just shows my custom UI here, where I say you can enable the notifications from settings or that's it. If I click the take me there button, I'm basically using this code here on the left to figure out how to get the user to the notification settings page in the system settings. Now this is a little bit hacky, so there's a difference between the OS versions in how you can do this sort of stuff. This new way that we did since Oreo, it still works, so that's fine. So if you launch the intent like this, then if I click take me there, it will open the app settings page on the notifications right away. Now this might be different if you have like a different implementation of the Android UI. This is of course stock UI, but in here I can see this toggle now, and if I flick it on here, that again implies I allow notifications. And then when I go back to the app and I click my button again, then it will actually come up in the notification tray up here. So now if I pull the shade down, then here it is. Here you can see it. But you have to give consent. Now, one burning question that I had in my mind when I read about this notifications permission was, how about foreground services? Because as you know, foreground services require a notification to be posted. Otherwise, they cannot live, they cannot survive. The system will just kill them. So I tried it out. I updated the app again to implement a very basic foreground service. So here it is. It doesn't really do anything, but the important part is in the onStart command, it will declare itself as being in the foreground. So right here you can see it basically creates its own notification channel for the foreground service. It's a low priority notification. Then it creates that notification and then it starts itself in the foreground. And then what the service does is it starts some asynchronous work as long as it lives. So that's how I figure out if the system service is actually running. And then in the onDestroy, I stop this asynchronous work and then I stop the foreground work. The asynchronous work is basically just I fire up a coroutine that just prints this every second until I kill it, or the system kills it. So let's see what happens. Here you can see how I extended the UI of my sample application to include 2 new buttons with which I can control the life of my foreground service. So on the left here, when I click the Start Foreground Service button, then a notification will be posted and the service will start. You can see it on the bottom in the logcat that logs are actually happening. And we should also be able to see a notification be posted to the notification tray, because this is the installation that still has the permission from just a minute ago. And here you can see it. The emulator is kind of slow, but it did show up in the end. If I click Stop FG Service, then it will die. We see, well, it's ever so slightly off camera, but we will be able to see, if I move it a little bit further, that the on-destroy of the service was actually called. So the service has died, it's now completely shut down, and so is the notification. So if I pull this down again, then we see there's no notification anymore. Now, what happens when I don't have permission to post notifications? I'm going to flick off the notifications permission now by going to System Settings and just toggling it off. And now let's return and let's try starting the foreground service again. Now keep in mind that logcat is still visible on the bottom, and we're going to see what happens. I'm clicking the Start Service button now, and we can see that in the logcat we see the onStart command, and now the service is actually doing some work. However, in the notification shade, if I pull this down, there's no notification here. Alas, we don't have permission. Android 13 also introduces another thing, which is called the Foreground Service Tasks view or something like that. If I pull the notification shade all the way down, on the very bottom, you can see that it says one active app. That basically means that one app currently has a foreground service running. If I click that, then this pop-up will appear and shows all the apps that have foreground services running at the time. So here you can see my Android 13 labs, and I can kill this process. If I kill this process, I'm going to do it now. I click the stop button. Then in the logcat, you can already see the process has ended. I don't get the on-destroy callback in this instance here. It's literally just like if you do an ADB kill with your application's process ID. It just terminates the process. You don't get any callbacks, any insights in that. It's just gone. But this is how you can still see that a foreground service is running. So the good news, foreground services will not break completely when you don't have notifications permission. Now, if you require that the notification be visible to your user for a foreground service, it's still super annoying, which is bad news. Good news is the foreground service itself still runs at least. So that's all I can share about the notifications permission at this point. There is in fact what I must call a petition to not add it. So there's this bug ticket here filed on the Google issue tracker urging Google not to put it into Android 13. I think it's kind of futile to do this. People have outlined good points in this discussion. However, I don't think it's going to be reverted, to be honest. And yeah. I started just to monitor the discussion. I'm not really in favor of removing it again. I think it's not that terrible, even though controversial. However, that's just me. So let's move on with the next feature. So the next thing really is nothing more than a good to know kind of thing. And it continues what was introduced in Android 12 with declaration of services and broadcast receivers. Remember, in the manifest for Android 12 support, we had to declare every activity and service as exported, yes or no, depending on whether we wanted other processes to be able to see it and like send messages to it. This was introduced for the manifest level. So for my amazing service here, I have to declare it as not exported in order to not crash at runtime. In Android 13, this kind of export declaration extends to the code level too. And it's only applicable for broadcast receivers. So I have added a broadcast receiver to my sample app, and I'm registering it in the onResume, and I'm unregistering it in the onPause. Now this is all pretty much standard. The new thing for Android 13 is this line here. The last parameter of register receiver on Android 13 and above has to have this flag here. There's one of two things that you can use here. You can either use receiver not exported or receiver exported. And that is the same as putting it in the manifest as exported false and true respectively. So for any broadcast receiver that you are registering programmatically, not in the manifest, but programmatically like this here, you have to give this flag, one of the two, when you register it. Apparently, otherwise you raise a security exception. I could not make this work running on my emulator with Developer Preview 2. The documentation says to enable some sort of flag in the developer settings. I did that, restarted the app. It still kind of worked even without it, so I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. However, the docs say that if you omit this flag, then you will crash at runtime. So I believe this is kind of an easy change. You have to go through all of the register receiver calls, like find and replace kind of thing, and you check, hey, is this broadcast receiver something that is interacting with other apps? If so, then pass receivers exported to it. If not, then you use the not exported flag. Pretty much a safe deal after that point. The next thing is also kind of interesting and again related to permissions management. It is the ability for users to revoke permissions at runtime, or I should say they can revoke it after they've been granted it. Now I've added another button to my app with which I can revoke the notifications permission that I've granted earlier. So this will come up in a moment here on my emulator device on the right. But basically, I added a button to the layout, and when clicked, it will invoke this method here, revoke notification permission. And here you can see this new line. This is a new API coming in Android 13. It enables you to revoke your own permissions on killing of the app. So this doesn't revoke it right away. You'd have to restart the app in order to make this change have effect. So my sample app currently has the permission to post notifications, as evidenced by me pulling the shade down here, and you see my notification at the top. What I'm going to click now is the new button I put here labeled revoke permission. If I click it, then this method will be called. It doesn't really do anything visibly because I don't show any dialog here. However, in the logcat, you can see that it says revoking notification permission on kill. So I have clicked the revoke permissions button now from the app and closed the app completely. I'm going to open it again, and we're going to find that I will not be able to post a new notification because I don't have the permission anymore. This works with select permissions that you can revoke, or there's a version that has permissions in the plural in the name, and that revokes all of your permissions at once. So just in case if you want to allow users to get rid of your permissions without going to system settings, this is the thing for you. You can see that I put this in a try catch and catching a security exception. That is because this method will throw if you don't have the permission to begin with. Then it will throw a security exception saying something to that effect. So you can see here in this case, I'm clicking the revoke permissions button over and over again, but on the bottom it says, no need to revoke permission. I didn't even have it in the first place. So I think that might be a good practice. You can also, of course, check first if you do have it and only then allow it to be revoked. That's the alternative. I chose this one just to test out what happens when you don't even have the permission that you're trying to revoke. Lastly, I want to go back to the app language and text-based improvements on Android 13. Last time we hinted at this already when we talked through the in-app language changers and language pickers that I built into the sample app here as well. Developer Preview 2 gives more stuff that comes with text, especially for non-English locales, which is really interesting to me because my day job involves a lot of Japanese. So I'm really much for the new things that come here. So I want to brush on these a little briefly. So Android 13 has this text conversion API, for instance. It doesn't have any Javadoc at the moment, so I don't really understand how it's supposed to be used. Hopefully that comes later. But it helps in languages like Japanese, where people usually search for things phonetically with one type of characters, and then what they search is transformed into a different type of character. So like from hiragana to kanji, for instance, and that then carries the meaning because there's a lot of words that just sound like sho. And what sho you actually mean depends on what kanji is reflecting of that phonetic input that you give. Maybe I can revisit this in the later developer preview if there's more documentation, because frankly, right now, I don't understand it. There's better line heights here, so text in non-Latin script doesn't clip anymore at the bottom here. That's kind of nice. But then the last thing that I actually want to explore in the sample app here to close out this video is this here, the improved Japanese text wrapping. You can see on the top here that this phrase is not formatted really that nicely. So at the end here, we have basically 3 parts, and the third part is kind of torn apart in the middle. So we have these 2 characters, which are kanji. Then we have this, which is a hiragana, which combines these 2. And then the last part is the word mobile in a different kind of Japanese script. But the last part of this word is put into the next line because it didn't fit anymore up here. And this is kind of annoying, and this is what I've been seeing in my day job over and over again too, is where basically think of it as you have an English word, but just the last letter is like in the next line. It kind of looks terrible. And what Android 13 is allowing us to do is we can specify the line break word style of a text view so that it kind of semantically groups together these pieces so that the word mobile isn't torn apart in the middle, but it's put into the next line on its own entirely. Their example says that you can specify this in XML. You can also do it programmatically, and that's what I have done in my sample app here. I updated the text from hello world to a longer lorem ipsum kind of thing, and I added this checkbox too. And what happens when I click the checkbox, if I scroll a little up here, whenever the checkbox is updated, it calls the update lorem ipsum text wrapping method. If we go down here, we can see again, this only works on Android 13 at the moment. Let's hope that it comes to Android X too. But what you can do is on the text view, this is a text view, you can get the line break config. And on that object, you can update the line break word style. And there's one of 2 things that you can do. It's either none or it's phrase, and phrase is the new thing that we want. So basically when the checkbox is ticked, then we change it to phrase, otherwise we change it to none. And then at the end, we have to apply the new config to the text view. It's kind of similar to the layout params. If you just change a property in the layout params, the view doesn't care. You have to give the layout params explicitly, and that will trigger then a remeasure and relayout pass. So in the app here, I've set it to English, and if I click this checkbox or not, it's not going to matter because this is a Latin script, and this new Android 13 change does not have any advantages on Latin script. So now I'm going to flip the app language to Japanese by clicking the radio button below, and when the app is relaunching, then I'm going to click the checkbox again, and then we're going to see what happens. So now it's in Japanese, and already in the first line, you can see that there's a break. The last 2 characters in the first line mean a, ni, and the first one in the second line means me. So this is the word anime, which is torn apart in the middle into 2 lines. And this is with the non-word style. So if I click the checkbox, it's going to change that text view at the top to become a phrase broken text view instead. So if I click this and I check the checkbox, then we're going to see that the text in the text view is going to shift around a little bit so that the word anime is now in its very own line. And the same happens for other pieces of this text that I just copied from somewhere. So that's really nice. It's not going to matter if your primary audience is based in Latin script, but if it's not, then it can greatly improve the experience that your users have. And I'm really glad that Google thinks of this from time to time. It feels like a lot of the time it's just focused on English as like the primary driver, and it kind of makes sense because Google is a US company, but still Android is such a global phenomenon that also non-English speakers can benefit greatly from things like these. So I really appreciate that the team set aside some sort of product manager to drive this feature. I'm really glad. Thank you, Google. And I believe that rounds out the second developer preview. Again, I did not touch on everything, but I wanted to look into the things that interest me the most, and I had to get into the notifications permission just because it's such a hot topic at the moment, and I teased it in the last video. Now it's actually here. It's going to be some hassle, but let's face it, we are used to the hassle, aren't we? So we're also going to get through this. I don't think it's going to get revoked as per this petition that I showed, but now, let's see where it goes in the next developer preview. I'm guessing we're going to get at least one more and then maybe the beta. We're going to see. I'm going to keep you posted when something comes out. Until then, thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you like this kind of content. I stream also sometimes. And until then, talk to you later. Bye-bye.